grindstone. Scrooge, a squeezing, wrenching, grasping, clutching, covetous old sinner, hard and sharp as flint, from which no steel had ever struck out. He was solitary, secret, and self-contained as an oyster. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, and stiffened his gaze, made his eyes red and his thin lips blue, and spoke out shrewdly in a grating voice. That was Charles Dickens' portrayal of Ebenezer Scrooge in his A Christmas Carol. In our culture, it is very easy to be a Scrooge. So much pain, sorrow, murder, and strife surround us. In this book, Scrooge was faced with two choices: to pardon himself or to do something about all the pain he was feeling. Sadly, he chose to pardon himself. One Christmas Eve, Scrooge was visited by 4 ghosts: the ghost of Marley, his former co-worker, the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas future. These ghosts came with the intention to change Scrooge's hard heart. This story is set in the British culture, but that does not mean we cannot learn something from this enjoyable story. We'll jump into this captivating narrative of Scrooge's encounter with his nephew. "Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you!" cried a cheerful voice. It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew, who came upon him so quickly that this was his first intimation upon his approach. "Bah! Humbug! Christmas? A humbug? Uncle, I'm sure you don't mean that." "Oh, but I do. Merry Christmas. What right have you to be married? What reason have you to be married? You're poor enough. Come next. What right have you to be dismal? What reason have you to be cross? You're rich enough." "Bah, humbug. Don't be cross, Uncle. What else can I be when I live in such a world of fools as this? Merry Christmas. What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older, but not an hour richer? If I could work my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled in his own pudding and buried with a stick of holly for his hearts. Uncle, nephew, keep Christmas in your own and let me keep it in mine. Keep it, but you don't keep it. Let me leave it alone then. Much good may it do you. Much good it has ever done you. There are many things from which I have derived good, but by which I have not profited. Christmas among the rest. But I'm sure I've always thought of Christmas time as that anything belonging to it can be apart from, that is a good time, a kind, charitable, forgiving time. The only time I know of in the long calendar of the year, when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up heart freely and to think of others below them as if they really were fellow passengers to the grave, and not another race of creature bound on their journeys. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe it has done me good, and will do me good. And I say God bless it. Here we see Scrooge's coldness to the world, and how he hardened himself despite his prosperous ways. Here we also observe his nephew's gay spirit, regardless of his poverty. Next, we'll skip to Scrooge's encounter with the third ghost. Second ghost. The ghost of Christmas present. "And how did Tiny Tim behave?" asked Miss Cratchit. "As good as gold," said Bob, "and better. Somehow he is thoughtful sitting by himself so much, and thinks the strangest things you ever heard. He told me coming home that he hoped the people saw him in the church because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day who made the lame beggars walk and the blind men see." Bob's voice was tremulous when he told him this, and trembled more when he said that Tiny Tim was growing strong and hearty. His active little crouch was was heard upon the floor, and back came Tiny Tim before another word was spoken, escorted by his brother and sister. Then Bob proposed, "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dear. God bless us," which all the family re-echoed. "God bless us, everyone," said Tiny Tim, the last of all. He sat close to his father's side upon his little stool. Bob held his withered little hand in his, as if he loved him and dreaded the day that he might be taken away from him. "Spirit," said Scrooge with an interest he had never felt before. "Tell me if Tiny Tim will live. I see a vacant seat in the poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, the child will die. No, no, my spirit, tell me he will be spared. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, none other of my race will find him here." In these excerpts, we see people affected by pain and suffering. Tiny Tim and Scrooge's nephew took the correct approach. Even though they were poor, they still chose to be cheerful. Later in the story, Scrooge trades his heart of stone for a caring heart. In Great Britain, they are faced with debt, disarray, increasing crime, and devolution. It would be very easy for them to be sorrowful, or a so-called Scrooge. We are also faced with a similar dilemma. We can choose to do something about all the ache and grief we feel, or we can sit back and sulk. It is your choice. No one can make it